Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast, where we explore your hidden thoughts and desires, revealing your greatest drop the soap moments. Now here's your host, Art Costello.
Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast. Today my guest is Dr. Lori Shemek, the best-selling author of Fire Up Your Fat Burn and How to Fight Flatflammation. And I'll try not to slay that word, flatflammation. But she's a leading health and weight loss expert, is also now known as the Inflammation Terminator. She has made it her mission to help clients lose weight, educate the public on the toxic effects of certain foods and lifestyle choices, and how they create inflammation in the body, resulting in weight gain. A leading authority on inflammation and its role in weight loss, preventing disease, and optimizing health. The Huffington Post has recognized Dr. Shemek as twice as the top 16 health and fitness expert, alongside such names as Dr. Oz, David Senzenko, author of Eat This and Not That. And the Huffington Post has also recognized her as one of the top 35 diet and nutrition experts. Lori is a regular health contributor to Fox News. She is also a health expert for the ABC TV show Good Morning Texas. Dr. Shemek holds a doctorate in psychology. She is a certified nutritional consultant and a certified life coach. She has been featured on numerous radio talk shows as well as TV shows. She has been interviewed in Ladies Home Journal, Shape Magazine, Women's Day Magazine, Health Magazine, iVillage, Yahoo, Livestrong, CNN, Fox News, The Ricky Lake Show, Friends of Ricky Lake, and many others. Lori has authored numerous articles and is actively doing speaking engagements and events, large and small. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Shemek.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. That's very kind of you. Nice to be here, Art. Finally.
Finally.
Yeah.
You're probably one of the few people that I've trusted with my health stuff that goes on. And you know that I text you often about doing stuff with sugar.
Right.
And sugar is really a culprit in inflammation. But before we go there, do you want to tell your story?
Sure. We all have a story, right? And there's a reason we all do what we're doing, whether we like it or not. But my story really goes back to my mother, and she was a single mother, and she was raising three of us. And I was the oldest, and I had two younger brothers. And unfortunately, my mother, she had a constant string of different health conditions, constantly. And I often remember walking into her dark room, seeing her laying there suffering, and it broke my heart. And I did not know what to do because I was so young, but I knew intuitively that she could make different choices. And so, my mother, she was very overweight, bordering on obese. She smoked 1.5 packs of cigarettes a day. Sugar was the focus of her diet. She was under enormous stress. You can imagine raising three young children, right, on your own without any help from anybody. She was estranged from her family. And, I never saw my grandparents, or I think a couple times in my life had I ever seen them. And she did not have a husband. We had little money to live on. We were often hungry. I remember just eating grass and flowers and dog food even, because we didn't have enough money to eat. And so, the struggles were real. My mother's choices in men were horrible. And so, it was pretty much, I became the substitute mother for my two younger brothers. And that meant that I was taking care of them. I would protect my mother because I didn't want her to suffer any more than she was suffering. So any of the problems that were brewing with them were not addressed early, right? Because she never found out about these things. And so as time went on, my mother's health began to dwindle. And she died at the very young age of 36, leaving behind three young children with literally nowhere to go. And so I always emphasize choice when I talk to people, because it really is our choices that make the difference one small change can have a powerful domino effect in everybody's life, not just yours. So my mother is not alone, though. There are so many people that feel like this is their lot in life. This is the hand they've been dealt. So they throw their hands up in the air and they say it's not in the cards for me, but that's not true. And there's always hope and there's always change available. Choices are key. And so my brothers and I we were separated and we never lived together again. They found my father, and one of my brothers went to go live with him. I went to go live with my grandparents that I never knew, hardly. And then my other brother, youngest brother, went to go live with a family friend's daughter. And so that was that. And that is why I do what I do, because I was always interested in health. And it was funny because, my mother was in the nursing industry and she had a ton of medical books and health books. And so you could just see me as a young girl just perusing those books, right? That was my entertainment. And she'd just walk by and shake her head. But, I always had an interest in health. It doesn't mean that I always chose healthy foods by any stretch of the imagination. But that's my mother. It was at her memorial service that I decided what I wanted to do with my life for the most part. I knew I wanted to help others make different choices, better choices, and I wanted them to understand that they have choice to make. Because again, so many people don't feel like they have choice. And so that's been my mission. And it's all because of my mother. I dedicated my last book to her because she was really a great example of people that, try really hard, but they're not looking on the other side, right? They're not looking on the flip side, which is, what can my life look like? It was very entrenched in this sickness.
Yeah, what amazes me is that how similar some things are in our backgrounds, in mine and yours.
Oh, wow.
Because I grew up when I was born until I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
And then my parents moved to a very rural area from the city, and my mom and dad split up, and my mom had to go work and she left us on this farm, and we had no neighbors within 3 miles. And I had to take care of my sister, and we fended for ourselves. And we used to have a truck that used to come down the road. And this is back in the 50s. Mm-hmm. We had a truck that came down the road, and it was a bread truck, and he had all these pastries on there.
And didn't that smell good? If you ever got close enough?
Because
I remember those bread trucks and Wonder Bread trucks. Yeah.
And when you're hungry,
oh yeah,
as we were, this gentleman that had that route decided he was going to set us up on where we could get things off of the truck. And then he would bill my mom at the end of the month. And my sister and I used to eat junk food. We didn't buy good stuff, or get good stuff off him. We used to buy the junk food.
Most kids don't.
Hostess,
if left to their own.
Twinkies or whatever they were.
Right.
I don't remember what they were, but we bought them. And I honestly believe with me, that's where my sugar addiction started, because before that, we didn't have a lot to eat, but what we did have a lot of is because we raised some cattle on our place. We always butchered a hog and a calf for veal and a cow for steak. And
mm-hmm.
I mean, I ate tongue. I mean,
oh yeah. So we did too. Yeah.
So I loved all that, the meat. So, and then to have the sugar introduced, I believe it really messed us up, because my sister, on the other hand, and when she became older, became a severe diabetic and has had massive health issues. But But I think a lot of it goes back a lot to, and when you were speaking, I was thinking about how you overcame all of this, and you've become a PhD. You're on TV, radio. Your expectations must have really been focused and Did you have intuitiveness about it, about what you wanted to do and how you want to do it? Did you ever think about your expectations or even have epiphanies like I talk in the show, have epiphanies about what you wanted to do? And if you did, how did you have them? Did you daydream outside on a hillside or sit in a chair and fantasize
Well,
about stuff you were reading?
I hate to disappoint you, but no. I'm one of those few people that I honestly, it didn't come to me really until I was in my 20s. What I wanted to what the kind of impact I wanted to make, and the type of career I wanted to have. I went into counseling psychology, because as I said, I wanted to help people and help them make different choices. But my love for health brought me back to school. So I went back and got my nutritional certification degree, and then I did that for a while, and then created my own company, which is HealthWorks. And so that's how that started. But it's interesting. My mother, she never, asked me, what do you want to do with your life? Do you want to be a firewoman or, anything like that? But, I just, so it was pretty much, I was left to my own devices. She wasn't available. And so that there was no push. I remember even the SATs in school, my best friend was taking them. I said, what are you doing Saturday? She goes, oh, well, I'm taking the SATs. And I went, oh, you are? She says, you're not? And I said, no. She said, I said, should I be? And so that's how we were my brothers and I were really left to our own devices. We didn't have anybody there to really take care of us. And I have to say too, that when my mother was well during those few times, she wasn't there. Okay. So it was pretty much the three of us, my brothers and I.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. So, I ended up going with my friend to take the SATs and took them. Thank God for her. But, so it's really when you have an absent parent, whether the parent really is still there or whether they're literally absent, it's hard for the children in many ways, and the ramifications are seen later in adult life. But in my case, I think I was born with an ability to not really focus on it too much. It's more about moving forward in life, and I've always been that way. I've never been one. Now, my brother's a different story. He was very angry about not having a father and about not having a close relationship with his mother. So with me, it was like more, I love my mother. I don't know who my father is. I do now, but I didn't then. And it was okay with me. It was just the way I was, I guess.
Yeah, I understand it because with myself, I was pretty much the same way. My parents, my dad was away and he used to come home maybe one day a week and then go back out and work out of town. But I had played baseball all my life up until I was 9 years old, that long life I had till 9. And then when we moved to the farm, I had no one to play with. And what my refuge became for me is I went to the top of a hill and laid and had these conversations with God and the universe about what was going to become of me. And I heard this voice that just said, your job is to be faithful and just keep doing the right things. And that became, after many trips up that hill, that became my mantra. I mean, I lived by it. I believed it. And I have believed it all my life. And I went in at 17 when I graduated from high school. I went in the Marines and got the discipline and the structure that I needed in my life. So I know how I got mine. And my comparison is my brother and sister. My brother was older, 8 years older, and my sister is 2 years younger. And my sister has all these physical issues. They've never left the area where we grew up. My brother passed away last year from brain cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Was
it glioma?
No, what happened is they think that he had prostate cancer and it metastasized into his liver and kidneys and then just everywhere and got into his brain. But My brother, God love him. I loved him, but he was, I don't want to say he was angry, but he didn't have filters
Mm-hmm.
in the things that he did and said. He's married numerous times, always in relationships. And, just one thing after the other. And he was so hardworking, and he worked himself 3 and 4 jobs. So he was really, really driven that way, which really my sister and brother and I both were. We got a good work ethic from somebody in our family. But one of the things when you were talking that I was reminded of when I was in high school, it was so bad for us that I went to high school, and when I was a freshman, and asked one of the prettiest girls in school if she would go to school dance with me. And she said to me, "I wouldn't go anywhere with you because you stink. And I'll never go anywhere with you." And it devastated me.
Oh, yes.
And I went and talked to a friend, one of the few friends I had in high school. And he said, "Art, I've been meaning to talk to you about it. Hasn't anyone ever told you about deodorant?" My parents never even told us about deodorant.
Oh, that is so sad. Oh my goodness.
They never put any expectations on for our health and fitness or our
social, so that you're socially acceptable.
Yeah, anything like that. And I know that they loved us, and I know that they cared about us. They were just, I don't want to say I hate using the word they were ignorant, but they were socially ignorant, maybe.
That's a good way to put it. Right. They just didn't know any better.
They didn't
socially.
I think they knew personally, socially. They didn't know how to transfer the information that they had in their head to their children. They never.
Yeah. And that's really a great example of so many people, parents out there, they're really trying to do the right thing, but they just don't know.
No.
They don't know any better.
That is true. So, those kind of things really, when I was up on that hill and I started to believe and have faith that everything was always going to work out. And it's always been that way all my life.
That's how it has been with me too. And I always felt like everything's going to be fine.
Yep. No matter what we do, it's always going to work out. Vietnam was that way with me. The death of my wife, Vicki, of 35 years, when she passed away from ovarian cancer, I fell apart for three years. But after I laid back down on the lawn at the ranch and looked into the sky and heard the voice say to me again, "Get up, get doing. I've given you all the tools." And so many good things have come out of that. There's so many positive things. And I think it really is a matter of how we choose and how we expect. Because if we always expect things to work out, we tend to look at everything, all the events in our life as learning experiences.
I love that. And that's why you wrote that book, correct?
That is correct. That is, expectation therapy came out of those events in my life. And that I look at everything as a learning experience, moving us forward to get to where we are. What's the worst thing about any of that is if you don't learn and you keep making the same mistakes.
Right. Exactly. I've done that.
Well, I think we all do it to some degree.
Yeah. Right.
But it's when you make the same mistake over and over again, there's something
right.
There's something going on.
Something's you need a.
But that's about our backgrounds are so similar.
Yeah, they are. But I knew that about you, Art. You seem like a very. I always have a sense about people, and I get a feeling of their sensitivity and their authenticity. If that's such an overused word, though, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? That there's some sort of feeling that I get about people that I can tell that have most people who are very kind and sensitive, and I mean it in only the most powerful sense, have had a background where they've had to endure and then overcome. And so
where I noticed it? When I went to Croatia, I was in Croatia, and in 1990 they had the Bosnian-Croatian War and all this stuff that went on over there. And that was one of the things that I noticed about that, is that people that have lived through traumatic experiences of war, death of some sort, can be parents, could be any kind, but lived through that, has a heightened sense of the value of our lives.
Yes.
How thin the line is
Right.
between living and dying. It's such a thin line. And I think we choose we make a conscious choice in our head that says, okay, I'm going to throw all that fear aside about dying because I want to live. I can remember in Vietnam saying that,
Yeah.
and wanting to live and wanting to live to the fullest.
Right. And that's that determination that, puts some people ahead of others in terms of success in life, But yeah, it's, I was listening to I was reading something online somewhere, and it was a tweet, and the guy said, some people had plans later today and they never made it. They died that day. And some people had plans earlier that morning and they just, were never able to really do what they had planned on doing. So we have plans on having dinner with our loved ones tonight, but that thin line you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
You never know when it's your time to go. But when you have a respect for it and you've been through loss in your life, then it changes everything, in my opinion. I mean, I learned about loss at a very young age from from a toddler and then on up. But so it's always made me appreciate life, and I'm so grateful for it.
It is. People would think you're crazy if you said that was a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is a blessing because you haven't let it inhibit who Lori is. You've used it to catapult you to becoming a PhD, and just an influencer in so many areas. And that's one of the things that always intrigues me is what is that little space where somebody goes to the dark side of things and the other person goes to the light side and sees all the positive and the negative, and not the negatives.
Mm-hmm.
The other person sees the negatives and none of the positives.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And I think it's not something, it's definitely something that we choose, but I also think it's something that's innate.
You know what? Let me throw this in.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it sets in our view of expectations, how we expect, because I believe that God planted the seed of expectation in every man, woman, and child.
I agree with that. Yes.
At birth.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere along the line, in my research, I've noticed that we see our expectations through two lenses. And sometimes it vacillates, but one is faith and the other's fear. If we see things in fear, of course, it stops things. But when we see things in faith not always being a religious faith, it can be faith in yourself. It can be faith in a mentor, a pastor. I mean, there's any number of different. I always tell people there's as many variations of faith as there is fear, because it's always juxtaposed.
True. I was interviewing a health expert yesterday on my podcast, and she says, she's one of the first things you have to address, her clients have to address about themselves trying to lose weight is their belief in themselves. If they really believe that they deserve it, and if there's that thin person in there, right? You have to have that belief, that faith.
Yep. And it's just the way that we view our expectations. But in my research, I also know that, and this is why I started the Epiphanies podcast, is because I believe that we have epiphanies all the time. Some of us have them in showers. Some of us, I interviewed a girl this morning on my podcast, and she was telling me that her epiphanies come when she's blow drying her hair. And she said, "Is that possible?" And I said, "You tell me." I said, when I did, she said, "I get these flood of ideas when that warm air is going over my hair and it's blowing." And I said, "That's when you have your epiphanies. They're different for everybody."
Right.
But those epiphanies are the precursor to our expectations.
I love that.
Yeah, they're the precursors. So,
yeah.
And what happens is most people that have epiphanies don't do anything with them.
Right.
They let them sit in their head. Some people move forward with them and they become expectations, and they don't do anything with them. The key to all of it is to do something with them and start living them, moving forward, and becoming who you're meant to be. Because I believe those are the true, that's where you find your authenticity, your gratitude, all these things that Brene Brown and all the experts talk about, I think are found in that area of the brain where we have these epiphanies and expectations, and they don't act upon them. And action is what, anything that we think and stays in our head is merely a thought, but anything we act upon becomes an action that we take and move forward. It always is moving us forward.
Right. And then we activate that reticular activating system in our brain, the RAS.
Right.
And that keeps it's like a snowball effect.
Right. And it just keeps us going and moving and doing things, which gets me to a point. What do you feel the effects of sugar are on the brain?
Oh, detrimental, really toxic. And, I just recently did the 23andMe DNA test, and they, they're like, they want your permission before they show you your test of breast cancer or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. And I forgot what the other one was. And I'm like, do I want to know? So I tested positive for having one copy of the APOE4, right, which is for Alzheimer's. And so, many people have 2 copies, which means you have a higher percentage of getting it. But even with that, if you have 1, you have 2, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. It just means you're at a higher risk. Yes. And so the people that seem to be most at risk are those with diabetes, and those also who have diets that are really high in processed refined foods like sugar, right? Sugar and white flour. And what happens is there's a process, and this isn't the only reason. It's a complex issue, but there are other reasons which I can get into. But one reason is called glycation. So when we eat sugar, we change the nature and the structure of the tissues in our body. And this means that they stiffen, okay? It's called cross-linking. And that means that's not just happening in the brain where the tissues are changing. It's happening throughout the body. And wherever you're most vulnerable, it's going to probably set up there. And that even affects your skin. So it's like, it's also called caramelization of bodily tissue. So if you've seen how you take a piece of steak and it caramelizes, turns dark brown on one side before you flip it over, right?
Right.
Well, that's an example of caramelization, and it's called the browning effect. And that same effect is happening in the brain when people are eating an excess amount of this. Even a little bit of sugar causes this glycation reaction, and it produces something called AGEs, advanced glycation end products, right? So aptly named AGEs because it's aging. It's, like I said, it's causing sagging and wrinkling skin and other age-related diseases and illnesses. So the other issue that goes along with this type of food, if you can call it that, is spiking your insulin. And when that happens too much, you get the brain essentially isn't able to take hold of insulin. And, insulin it's like the key to a lock, if you will, to the neurons, and it delivers the glucose. The brain loves glucose. But eventually the cells, they have too much glucose going on and become resistant to insulin's effects. It's kind of like, insulin's knocking at the door of the cell and the cell stops answering the door completely. So they're thinking that Alzheimer's is a type of type 3 diabetes. It's more complicated than I'm saying here, but suffice it to say that sugar is one of the major contributors to Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. One of the things that I'd like to add to that is a lot of people think eating sugar is the culprit. I happen to believe with soft drinks that people drink sugar.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Right.
Just to give you an example, I told you about my sister and her medical issues.
Mm-hmm.
My sister and her husband drink so much Diet Pepsi that
Mm-hmm.
it just floors me. My sister has scleroderma. She's a diabetic. She has major issues, skin issues, because of the scleroderma and all the other things.
Right.
And she continues to drink. I have tried to get her to drink water. They do not drink water. They drink nothing but Diet Pepsi.
It's addictive.
Yeah.
She's not alone. They
No,
are not alone. I mean, majority of my clients are either addicted to diet soda or they're addicted to soda. I would say 99% of them. And so it's really, to get them to do, that's why coaches and consulting and, these types of people helping you in your life are really important, because doing it on your own is hard. Sometimes it takes two.
Yeah, and that's why I thank you, because I read your book. You sent me your book,
Thank
Flat
you.
Formation, and I was having the knee issues and all the joint issues and all that kind of stuff, and the fogginess in the brain and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to know that if you start changing your diet, you actually can reverse some of these problems that the body has.
And, and that's really a great point. Without medication, right? You can start reducing the pain. You can start reducing the visible toxic effects. And then obviously the invisible toxic effects that are going on.
Yeah, I'm 71 years old. I'll be 72 this year. And I do not take any medication. None.
That's great. That is so fantastic, Art. Yeah. You're rocking it.
But, but it's a constant battle. I mean,
right.
This time of year.
Oh, well, in this time of life, once you hit, I would say your late 40s, but really once you hit your 50s, things start to slide. and you've got it. You have to make sure that you're staying up to, because the metabolism slows. It doesn't have to, but if you're, it's a really good time to start, keeping fit. And it doesn't matter what age you start, but better earlier than later. And taking care, stop the sugar, because obviously that's going to age you quicker. It's going to cause joint pain and health issues and whatnot. But yeah, so the earlier the better. But once, I would say once you get into your 50s, things start to go downhill unless you're staying one step ahead.
No one ever believes I'm 71. I mean, really, they just don't believe it, and I'm blessed, I guess, with that. But
did your parents look young? Is it genetic partly?
No, my mother was very obese, but both of my parents lived long lives. My dad lived, I think it was 88. And my mom was 87, 86.
That's wonderful.
So they both, and considering the lifestyle they lived, because they smoked, they drank.
Right.
Can
you imagine?
Yeah. But that's why I keep saying I'm going to live to be 130.
Yes, I know. It's true. Yeah, my grandmother, she just passed away in March, and she was 104.
I remember. And
I'm not kidding you. I said, when she was 90, I said, Grandma, I said, just exercise a little bit, just move your body just a little bit, every day. And she says, honey, if the good Lord wanted me to move at this age, I'd be moving. So that was the end of that conversation. But, think about if she had done some things differently, she would have been around longer and had a better quality of life in the end.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, our diet is so important to our overall, not only our physical health, but our mental health.
Yeah, it really is. The world would be a much nicer place. We wouldn't have, angry drivers, and you wouldn't get angry at drivers as much, if we had the right neurotransmitters floating around.
Oh, man.
I'm telling you, if people ate right and they stopped eating the junk that they're eating, I
thought we were going to have to build more freeways.
Yeah, we might, just to put the bad drivers there.
Well, I just was reading an article about global warming, in that this scientist at Harvard, just came out with that he doesn't believe that global warming is a real issue. What the real issue is overpopulation, that we actually have become so populated on Earth that the weight of all these human beings and their buildings and everything else has shifted the axis of the Earth.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective.
Boy, it really is.
Wow, I've never heard that.
And he's backing it up with actual data on how the axis of the Earth is changing. But the good thing about it is, he said it's going to take about 50,000 years before we all kill ourselves. But the axis is, we go into a deep freeze and it'll be so cold we'll, just be gone. But,
Right.
So
yeah. Wow, that's interesting, Art.
Yeah, unless we accelerate our birth rate again.
Right. Which we may, you never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, it's very, very important for people to take good care of their health. I do that. I feel that way. And, whatever you can do, it's even, if it's just taking, like, just adding some broccoli sprouts, or some type of sprouts, or adding some leafy greens to one meal in your day, it's going to have a huge effect on your cellular health. And that's really what it boils down to, is your cell health.
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate with being able to, I do change very easily. Mm-hmm. I always say that I work on the all or none principle, that either I go all in or I'm all out. Mm-hmm. But with my eating and stuff like that, I actually enjoy vegetables. I love them. Cauliflower, broccoli, avocados. Mm-hmm. Those are all favorites of mine. Lean meats and fish, I'm just big on. And
well, you have it down pat then. That's pretty much what it is. And there's also, I believe, in targeted supplementation depending on certain health conditions or anti-aging. So so the combination of a healthy diet, movement in your day, less sitting, more standing, like right now I'm standing in this interview, and walking, just the combination of all of that is very important. Especially as we age, it is crucial that we keep our muscles strong and we keep our muscle mass intact. So that's just something else that I think really needs to be said. A lot of people don't realize that, day by day, they're losing muscle mass, and it starts in our late 20s, but it becomes huge. It becomes, just what's the word? Just an avalanche, if you will, of loss after the age of 45. So it's very important for people to keep it, because it's our muscles that keep us active, upright, independent when we're older, but it also boosts our metabolism. It reduces, if you're actively doing strength training or resistance training in any form, it's reducing your blood pressure. It's promoting better insulin sensitivity, which is a key marker of optimal health. Mm-hmm. And it's anti-aging.
How about cholesterol?
Cholesterol, now there's two different camps, and there's all sorts of fights all the time about this between experts, right? Cardiologists, top cardiologists, in fact. And so there's one camp that says, you can eat all the saturated fat you want and all of the cholesterol you want. And then there's the other camp that says, don't do that, because you're going to occlude your arteries. Mm-hmm. And so there is quality research out there showing that dietary cholesterol, has a negligible effect on our blood. Okay, in our blood level in our blood. So you can eat eggs and you'll see just a smidge rise in LDL. Okay. But then there's a group of people too that need to be very careful, and it's a genetic condition, and it's called familial hypercholesterolemia. And it's a defect really in a gene that they've inherited. And it happens to about 10% of our population. And they have dramatically high cholesterol levels. And so they're required not to eat any cholesterol in their diet. because their liver can't get rid of it,
Yeah, I must be pretty lucky because my cholesterol levels have always, no matter what my diet was, been very low. Matter of fact, some doctors have said to me, "It's too low. You gotta."
That could be a problem too.
Yeah,
Too low.
like it runs around 119, 120.
Okay.
Which is
Yeah.
borderline low.
Right.
But,
it is. Well, what is your HDL? Do you remember?
It's good. I know that.
Okay. That's all we need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they always.
And I remember you said your triglycerides were good as well. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
So
if those two markers are good, you're good.
Yeah. Well, we already knew I was good. But,
Yeah.
But anyway, we're nearing the end of our time together, which I hate, but
yeah, it was such fun talking to you, connecting with you finally.
Yeah. Is there anything that you can leave our audience with that you'd like to leave our audience with before we say goodbye?
Yes, I would love for anyone listening to know that you do have choice in life, to take that one small step and know that you are inherently worthwhile and valuable. And when you believe that, you'll do everything possible to live a life that you love.
Where can we find out about Dr. Lori?
Well, you can find me at drlorishemek.com, or you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. I post every day health tips. So nutrition, health, sleep, fitness, anything to make your life healthier. And on Facebook, I'm Dr. Lori Shemek. And on Twitter, I'm Lori Shemek. And I'm on Instagram as Lori Shemek as well.
Thank you for being with us today. And
thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I always enjoy talking with you, and you always leave me with such good tips on my health.
Oh, well, I enjoy it. So just appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, you've been a blessing in my life too, Lori. So,
same here. Yeah.
Well, let's say goodbye and
goodbye.
Well, bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the show. Drop us your comments and questions with what you want answered on the show. You can subscribe on iTunes and Binge Network. You can also get more information on the website, expectationtherapy.com.